Hey guys, what's up? Unrested here. If it's your first time on the channel, I do everything that is Japan's frequently asked questions. If you have a question, put it in the comments below, and just like today, you may end up as one of the videos. In this one, Tiger Thomas Oi3CY asks, so, could you make a video on how you learned Japanese? My response to that being, the way I learned was far more brutal. I'll perhaps get into it in a future video. Now, that video is this one. And what I'm going to do is kind of give you a sort of ramble about how my journey went. As far as learning Japanese, it's not the usual course. And in fact, it was kind of a failure. I was put in a weird situation when I came to Japan. So, first of all, let's get this little image off the screen and take a look right here. This is young 2007 Scott, February 13th, 14th, I think, is when I first got to Japan. I came over with a company called Nova. You may have heard this story before. Nova went completely bankrupt. They went bankrupt within the first 3 months that I got to Japan. That lent me to be thrown to the dogs. I was out on the street because if you didn't know, when you come over with Nova, they give you your job, they give you your salary, and guess what? They also give you your first apartment. And they take the money from your salary to pay for that apartment. Well, guess what started happening when they went completely in the red on the JASDAQ? They started keeping money that they usually paid people's rent for. That means your rent wasn't being paid while you were staying in the apartments that they were defaulting on the rent on. So a lot of us got thrown to the streets because, of course, landlords don't want you staying there for free, and Nova never told you that they stopped paying your rent. On top of it, my third month paycheck just never showed up. So I knew it was time to look for another job. The funny thing is that Nova did have the gall to call me and ask why I didn't show up to work after they didn't pay me. um, I said, well, it's time to look for another job. Your paycheck never came. And they said, oh, but it's just been an error with the computers and with the paychecks. And it's just like with every single person who works in all of Nova in every single school all across Japan, we're talking 900 schools. I could understand if it was a couple people in our department at our business that we worked at, which had like, I think 600 teachers, which all taught via webcam. But it wasn't just our department, it was every single school all across Japan. Um, that better be a major computer error. And the fact that we're only being told about this because we didn't show up to work and they're wondering why, um, not any kind of email or note home or company announcement that if you notice your pay is late, sorry, it's our fault. Computer error, it's going to be there on this day. There was nothing like that. It was just kind of like, oh, you didn't show up because you didn't get paid. Oh, well, we forgot to tell you. It was a computer error. Let's just say it was not a computer error. People just didn't get paid because they went bankrupt. So within the first 3 months, I'm in Japan. The company goes bankrupt, and I've got notes right here about kind of what the process was. So, um, whew, company goes bankrupt, um, and you're stuck doing everything yourself. At this point, my Japanese was like zero. I knew zero Japanese. I studied silly books like Genki Japanese or Japanese for Dummies, um, colloquial Japanese, and none of it was up to date. None of it was useful, and none of it actually led to real conversations in Japanese. It was all useless. If you want to start with those books, you can, but just realize what you're reading is kind of like robotic, weird Japanese that no one actually uses. On top of it, I am in Osaka. So you've got to understand there's a Kansai dialect. So I didn't understand anything. All the suffixes of every single verb were different than what I had learned in the books that I had studied. So I was completely lost. I had to learn how to get an apartment, how to sign up for rent, how to go ahead and learn transportation all around Japan, how to interview completely in Japanese. And this was with zero. I worked with a patchwork of Japanese that I learned from going to free classes that were taught at a place called OCAT Station. OCAT Station on the top level had um, obachans who taught for free, which was very nice of them. If you don't know obachan, it just kind of means like older ladies, which they're not really that old. We're talking like 40 and 50. I'm 45 now. I guess I'd be a OG-san at this point. Um, So I went there. I was in my mid 20s at the time and just kind of pieced together what they taught me. I would always try to get a teacher who only spoke in Japanese, and they were really nice and would speak super slow for me so I could pretty much figure out the words step by step as they were talking. And from there, I just kind of pieced together what I could to begin to speak. Um, this led to some really weird things. Like there was times where I'd say stuff and they'd be like, "Why are you speaking like an old lady?" And be like, "Because I've only learned from old ladies." I would say stuff that only would be used by a feminine speaker at times. I didn't understand the difference between atashi and watashi. I said some very funny stuff. I said some very embarrassing stuff, and I completely stumbled through the language. Even to this day, I am currently still taking Japanese lessons because my Japanese grammar and what I say is a patchwork. It is a strange, strange patchwork. Um, for example, recently I learned the word hatake for field, but I had always been using the word den and had no idea hatake existed. Um, and it was way more common. It was kind of silly. It's a it's a very very basic word, and I had been using the word den for like it means like field or rice field, and I pretty much ended up doing stuff like this over and over again. I would say things like jibiki instead of jisho, which is like a super old word for dictionary. Um, I had all my words mixed up in all kinds of strange, different mishmash of languages, dialects, and different ways of speaking from different age levels, slang, etc. But I had to make it work. Of course, I got laughed at. People would smile as I asked for all different types of stuff, but I got through it. And the other big struggle that I had was I had to learn how to interview in Japanese. Some of the jobs that I was going for were brand new schools just opening up. So let me tell you some of the other things I kind of did to try and immerse myself in the culture. And this is kind of what some other language teachers on here talk about, how immersion is key. And I have to 100% agree with that. Um, I see people ask me all the time messages like, should I use Rosetta Stone? Should I use Duolingo? And it's like, you can use those. That's fine. They can give you tidbits of information when it comes to a language. But if learning a language was the whole meal, things like Duolingo and Rosetta Stone would be like very tiny hors d'oeuvres in comparison to actually consuming the feast that is a full language. Um, you will constantly be left starving as far as your ability is concerned. And those are great for listening, a little bit of listening. They're not so great for actually speaking, and they're not great for listening when it comes to actual natural speed and natural, everyday, casual, and street Japanese. So that's where I would really, really dissuade you from using those. Um, what I do want to add is, let me just change the picture out here. We do have images for this. Um, Turn this down and go through. Some of the events that I would try to go to. Um, I would try to hit up local events all around my area. I lived in a area called Sakuragawa and also Kitahorie, and they were very, very urban, ultra urban, to the point that other Japanese people would tell me these areas were dangerous, which they really weren't. There's not really like super dangerous areas. Um, but here, let me show you. So this is a very young Scott once again, hanging out with the locals, making sure I go to local restaurants, local bars, local clubs. There were all different types of events in an area called Amimura near me, which I was big into hanging out with. And this was all people who couldn't speak a lick of English. And they were people who were excited to meet Gaijin, talk to Gaijin foreigners. I mean, when I say Gaijin, and they were willing to speak slow for me. And these are the kind of people you need to meet. They're excited about whatever your culture is. They don't know how to speak a word of your language, but they're willing to struggle with you to be able to speak to you. These are very, very nice. This is the wonderful thing about Japan. I hung out like with people who are into tattoos and stuff like that, and tattoo culture all throughout Japan. And this allowed me to not just share interests, but talk about hobbies and stuff that I was interested in. Make it easier for me to memorize words because it was stuff I was interested in. Just like now, I know a lot of words. I know a lot of lingo for like things about horror, Toshidensetsu. Great, I mispronounced it even as I'm trying to talk about it, which is urban legends, yokai, stuff like that, folklore throughout Japan. Um, I've been really big into that stuff, and I know a lot of Tango vocabulary about it. Um, at the same time, I feel like it's kind of limited me. I'm very bad when it comes to talking about Gigi Mondai, which is like current events and stuff like that. I've really struggled with that. Hence, I went back to Japanese lessons. Another big struggle I had, and I'm reaching out to any of you who struggle with this. I want you to know the struggle is real. It's not just you, it's not your problem. It's kind of a learning problem for us with ADHD and dyslexia. If you yourself don't have ADHD or dyslexia, let me just tell you right now, we hear about half the things people tell us, and it's not us trying to ignore people. It's not us trying to be mean. It's not us, being bored or disinterested with whoever we're meeting or talking to. It's literally us being dyslexic or ADHD. It makes it very difficult for you to learn a language, and on top of it, some of the medication you can get to help combat ADHD is not available in Japan, which is something that kind of saddens me because now being able to be on prescriptions that do help me with it and taking lessons via a live teacher, it's been a totally different experience. I'm learning and grasping the language by leaps and bounds. So if you can have a chance to learn via immersion, and when I say via immersion, I mean you need a Japanese teacher, tutor, whatever you want to call it, who is a native speaker and you have to talk to them weekly. This whole using a software program to learn tidbits of language is okay for a ultra first step, beginner's step into the whole world of learning a language, especially Japanese. But you need to sit down with a tutor, and um, I'm not getting any kickback from this. This is no. I use Preply. Preply, you can sign up for tutors as cheap as I've seen it as cheap as $6 per lesson. Mine's $9 per lesson. So I'm getting 4 a month for 36 bucks. Again, not sponsored, just been happy with the service. Um, and it's gone a lot better for me. I'm finally filling in gaps, especially grammatical gaps that I've struggled with for ages. And the reason I can do it now is because I can stay focused during the lesson because I'm on medication to help me with my ADHD and dyslexia. But I would not advise anybody to go the route that I went to learn Japanese. Do not throw yourself into a situation in which you are thrown out on the street and having to grasp at small straws of knowledge and bit by bit consume the language. I do recommend, however, that you do get involved in things like, let's bring the pictures back up again. Um, where we got it right here. There. Going to places where you can learn about the culture and interact with people. This is another example here. I want to go to the place that has the 10 yen coin and talk to people, guides, and friends who were willing to go with me there and explain stuff. You'll learn older Japanese words that, kind of fill in gaps for when you talk to someone who's elderly, because you will find later that even if you're cool and up to date on all the slang and casual street talk, that when you finally talk to someone who's up there in years, you don't understand a word they're saying. And that's because they're either using a really thick dialect from wherever they're from, like when I am in Kansai, but also maybe they're just using older vocabulary that you've just never heard before. Like I said, things like jibiki and momohiki, these are very old words for dictionary or underwear. Not that you're constantly talking about those two things, although I imagine you might actually talk about dictionary when you're learning the language. Um, I do have the lucky aspect that I'm married to a Japanese woman who's a native speaker, and my sons, who both speak native level Japanese, um, they always help me whenever I have a question to try and explain something to me. For example, um, I recently learned the I don't know if you'd call this like slang or like a saying, but mikubaozu, mikubaozu. There's not really a translation for it. There's some words like natsukashi, like to wax nostalgic. You look at something that makes you wax nostalgic, and you can be like, natsukashi. Perhaps if you're staring upon a Nintendo Entertainment System or Super Famicom. Um, and there's not really a translation. So I need help from native speakers at that point, and that's where immersion will really help you. Oh, and the other one, Mikupalsu, that one has just absolutely no equivalent in English. It pretty much, if you were to look it up, it would say 3-day monk. The kanji itself would say like 3-day monk. And what it's trying to say is that if there's something new you think you'll be super excited about and get into, I promise you, you'll lose interest in it within 3 days. Or literally translated as kind of like you imagine yourself to be a monk, devout and absolutely dedicated to this new hobby, but I promise you, you will only be a 3-day monk and give up this new hobby very quickly. There's, I mean, that's, you can't sit there explaining it and think it translates perfectly. So when I run into problems like that, I have to call on someone like my son or my wife to kind of explain it to me. And this is where immersion really, really helps. You have a Japanese friend who can help you learn this stuff. You have to integrate yourself into the culture either via something like Preply, where you can have a native speaking tutor, or you can, when you're in Japan, kind of throw yourself into Japanese life. Try to get away from only hanging out with close gaijin groups. For example, when I came over with 60 plus teachers on the airplane that I came over on. And I would say for the first week, we all kind of stuck together. And little by little, as the company collapsed around us, a lot of people went home. I was left there with only, I think one other teacher only survived the first 3 months. It was me and one other person who were able to find another job. The rest either just kind of gave up or just weren't interested in staying any longer and went home, which is fine. Nothing on them. It's a scary situation. You have no safety net. Um, but this forced both of us into a mad amount of exposure to Japanese. We had no choice. We had to go into it. We had to study hard. Um, so that really put us deeply into an ingrained culture of gaijin who are stuck learning via immersion. At the same time, it also kind of put me in panic mode. So I was learning just bits and pieces and created a patchwork on how I spoke. And again, I don't think I would recommend this. It's how I learned being thrown to the dogs, but it's not something that I would actually recommend. Nonetheless, I would recommend the idea of immersion. So for example, let me bring up another one here. And you're gonna probably laugh when you see me in these pictures. Now, please realize I'm dressed up for a cosplay event on this, okay? Um, Give me a second here. There we go. So if I look goofy, it's because I am purposely dressed goofy. And you can see, obviously, this is what's going on here. Involve yourself in events like this where people are there having a good time, they're in good spirits. You're hanging out with Kakashi Sensei from Naruto, and you're talking to him about how you learned the word hatake for field. You can meet up with these people, in which case you have no idea what their gender actually is. But they're very nice and will talk to you and be very excited that you're there to take pictures with them. These are super happy, super friendly, super outgoing situations that exist in places like Akihabara or in the area where I was at, Den Town. Um, there is all kinds of funny events like this. And this is when I was just a single guy, um, hadn't met my wife, didn't have any kids, was on my own, had nobody to help me, had no safety net out there. I just threw myself into it, going to concerts and stuff like this, meeting singers and stuff from like local death metal bands and things like this. This was really fun. But what I really realized, even more than it just being fun, it got me excited to learn the culture and learn the language sort of almost through osmosis. Because let me tell you, I am not a great language learner. I will never be a polyglot. I will never be someone you should look up to learn Japanese. My Japanese is still very stunted. Grammatically, I'm very bad. Um, I know it's weird. I know a lot of vocabulary. Like I know vocabulary that people are always surprised I know. I often don't know how to properly and grammatically place it into sentences. I also stumble when I try to express myself emotionally in Japanese or what my reaction would be to a certain situation. So that is something that I am able to now somewhat get through as I take more lessons via immersion with a one-on-one tutor while also being on medication for a learning disability I've struggled with my entire life. So this is kind of me reaching out to you, telling you don't give up, even if you're as bad as I am at learning languages. And let me tell you, I'm bad. I'm sure I have a very thick accent. On top of it, uh, outside of basic conversations, if I start to get into something technical, politics, science, current events, my grammar breaks down pretty poorly where I sound like a caveman explaining the news. Um, Nonetheless, you need to push yourself through these points. And lucky for all of us, the Japanese are by far the most forgiving. um, I have said stuff before that is not good to say in Japanese. They know what I'm trying to say, and they may laugh, they may smile, but they'll forgive me because they know I'm not trying to be rude or impolite. Asking someone, "Anata no seikatsu nan desu ka?" What do you do for like fun outside of work, or like what's your lifestyle outside of work? And then I would ask this question all the time the first time I would hang out with new friends and stuff like this. Not a big deal, right? One time I decided I was going to ask, like, what do you do when you hang out at night? Um, like, what do you like? Do you go to clubs? Do you like hang out at a bar? Do you go to a restaurant? Are you like you know, um, a gastronome? Isn't that people who like love to go try different types of food? Um, I decided to ask it and just add the word night onto lifestyle, right? Seikatsu, lifestyle, right? So I just said, "Anata no yoru no seikatsu wa nan desu ka?" And this is pretty much asking people what they do between the sheets. Not a great thing to bring up in a conversation. And right away, the friends who I had made were, very nice and said, okay, I think I understand what you're trying to say, but don't ever ask this question again. And you will have to make these faux pas, these slip ups, these um, absolute foolery of yourself, being the jester of a conversation. Don't don't take it to heart. Don't let it affect you. Okay, see it as a building block on better accumulating knowledge of the language, um, and adapting to how the sentence structure is totally different than everything you've known in English. Because I think that's, for me at least, that was one of the hardest things for me to get over, was to realize I needed to rearrange things where the verb was almost always at the end. I constantly wanted to put, subject, object, verb, right? But I would mess it up and do, the American style where it'd just be like subject, verb, object. And you've got to learn. I mean, this doesn't don't take this rule for everything. This isn't always going to work for you, but I would constantly force myself to think through the layout of my sentence in my mind as I would say it. But I'd also have a huge amount of problems just trying to take in what people were asking. The best I can tell you to do if you deal with the same kind of struggles I do as far as a learning disability, um, try to grab the few words you can. Okay, you're going to hear a couple words that you know, and try to put together what you think that person is saying. If you're doing this now, you're already getting pretty far into learning Japanese. Um, that was the best I could do at the beginning. I would just catch a couple of words and be like, "Oh, I know that word. Ah, I know that one. I think they're asking this." And then try to answer with what you think they're asking. And they'll be like, "What?" Or they'll smile and be like, "Yeah, okay, great. So you understand what I'm saying." Um, but they'll never ever get mad at you. That's the wonderful thing about the Japanese. They'll just kind of be like, "Oh, all right, he totally didn't understand what I just said. Let me try and ask that a different way." Um, um, or get really good at the sentence. Moikai yutte kudasai. Say it one more time, please. Definitely get used to that. But also be ready if you end up in Osaka, where I was. Every time you ask somebody to say a sentence again, they'll use like all new words and they'll never slow down, which I love about Osaka people. But it also makes me want to cry as I learn a language. Funny things like that they'll get you to adapt. Um, and little by little, you'll be able to catch more and more words and you'll be able to understand more and more sentences outside of the simple like Jiko Shokai introductions, right? So there you go. I hope that's somewhat answered the question of how did I learn Japanese and where am I as far as my own learning capabilities? I still got a long way to go, guys. I need to um, learn a ton more. Um, I need to learn a lot more as far as just current events are concerned, words and vocabulary that are used constantly in the news, used in newspapers, and used in just like everyday online articles about Japan. And little by little, I'm getting over that hurdle and understanding more and more. On top of it, I also have my teacher teaching me a lot of Kansai Ben because I need to learn the dialect better. Obviously, my house isn't going to be changing its location anytime soon. I'm going to live in Osaka for as long as I have a house in Japan. And I need to just accept the fact that I need to know Kansai Ben. Um, I guess the good thing about it, I learned the Kansai Ben, and oftentimes I already know what the Kanto Ben version of the suffix is that I'm trying to learn. So as soon as I learn the Kansai version, I've learned another word in two dialects pretty much. Um, I will tell you if you're not sure about where you're going to end up in Japan, check out if there is a dialect. All right. Places like Okinawa have that. So there you go. I'm sure there's going to be other questions. I'm sure there's going to be other aspects I forgot to cover in this. I know it was a bit of a ramble, but I did want to just be completely open and honest. Um, I will say another thing I am using right now. I am studying for the JLPT 3, which you guys are probably like, damn, dude, you're only doing level 3. You've lived there 15 years and you're only at level 3. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Um, I want to give you a site with free resources that my friend runs. It will have everything for JLPT 5 and 4, which are, you should start wherever you can start. 5 being the easiest level, and 4 being, the next level up from that. 1 is the hardest. I'll probably never reach that level. You need to know a ton of kanji, and I'll probably just never be there. It's fine. I don't plan to work for a Japanese company. I don't need JLPT 1. But here you go. It's wakokujp.com. Let me show you that one more time. wakokujp.com. All right. He's got JLPT 5 and 4 there, totally free for you to download the PDFs, go through it. This is stuff that will actually be on the test. I would suggest learning stuff like this because this is actually a Japanese test created by the Japanese, not a book sold in America by a non-native speaker, such as Japanese for Dummies. Try to always learn from resources that are written by someone who lives in Japan or is at least a native speaker, and use those to get started. There's more stuff on there too. I will tell you, I'll be 100% upfront with you. I'm using this, and if you do decide to purchase beyond, I think JLPT 4, I think there's actually stuff you can purchase if you get into like 3 and higher. I will get a kickback for it. So if you decide to do that, let them know Unrested sent you. It's I think I get 25% of your purchase. It's very small things. They're not super expensive things. What I want to just let you focus on first is the free resources. All right. Just start out with that. All right. If you feel like you're really interested in going hardcore and really becoming fluent, you'll only do that when you get to like JLPT 3 and higher than that. And if you do get to that point, let me know. You've already become better at speaking Japanese than me. That's amazing. Any questions again below, let me know. And until next time, guys, put your comments so that we can get more videos like this where your questions and comments become the very next video. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.